Hi everyone, thank you for the introduction. So I'm Adele Keane, COO and Creative Director at InBazaar, and I'm here with Michael Guerin, Founder and CEO. And today we're going to chat to you about spatial storytelling with no-code tools.
Great. So we're going to go back and forth between the two of us, but just to give you all an understanding of what we'll be speaking about today, we want to make sure that everybody is agreed on what spatial storytelling is, why it's useful, where we focus as a company, and then the how to do it. So starting off with the tech that you need to think about, and then also the no-code tools that you can use in your production pipeline. So starting off with what is spatial storytelling, before we get straight into that, I think we probably need to establish the foundation of what is a traditional story. So traditional story being centered on a plot, it tends to be very passive for the audience. So the audience tends to observe from a distance, be it film or whatever it might be. It tends to be quite linear in the flow that it follows. Linear followed by a flow generated by an author, and then in terms of the visuals, it mostly focused around a frame and camera angle. From a spatial story, it tends to be based on a location and focusing on the space around you at that location. It tends to be much more interactive for the audience, which gives the audience the ability to explore that location. And also then the audience or the user has the opportunity to craft the direction of that story. And probably a very important piece at the end is that what you want is the content and the virtual content in that experience to engage with the environment around it, or to be perceived to engage with the environment around it.
And to put that into different terms, so we've talked about like a frame is anything like a film, a TV show, even a book, they're all in a defined frame. And usually in this world, we talk about the director and the audience. The director has complete auteur over their film, and usually it's a linear narrative, whereas in the spatial storytelling world, it's more the creator and the user, and instead of the director having auteur, the user actually has agency. And then instead of using a term like film, we often call them experiences. And instead of being linear, they're often explorative narratives. So now that we've talked about what spatial storytelling is, we're going to go into why it's useful. So here's an example of a spatial storytelling experience that we created a couple of years ago. And this shows an old shop front in Waterford, a place in Ireland. And it used to be the first silversmith shop in Ireland that was run by a woman, and a lot of people don't know this. So we were able to actually transform that location into what the silversmith shop front used to look like. This overall enhances the engagement of users when they go to these places and connect with the spaces, and it really gives a more emotional impact compared to what like the more traditional storytelling would.
So a really important piece in this is what you can use the virtual content to give context to the space. So what you're seeing here is people engaging in experiences that we have launched in the last couple of years. This is an author that wrote a poem in this location in the church on the left-hand side, and on the right-hand side you have a location where Queen Victoria visited. So we've recreated a scene where you can see Queen Victoria painting a painting that she actually painted outside this building. So it's really to make people feel more connected to the space around them. And look, this is kind of an impact that we've seen. This is an experience we have in Spike Island, which is Ireland's version of Alcatraz. Loads of kids doing the experience of bringing the location to life. So they get to see the riot that happened in 1984. They get to see the conditions of the children's prison. They also get to see a prisoner in the punishment block chained to the wall, blindfolded, and they see the harrowing conditions that those prisoners are subjected to. So it's really about using the location that you're in and bringing it to life through this virtual content. So to give an example, and maybe just to elaborate on this a little bit further before we get into the no-code tools, so what exactly do we focus on as a company? So this is an experience, and I'll just play the video. So this is a monument of a bow of a ship, so the front of a ship, to commemorate 3 Spanish Armada ships that crashed on the beach just beyond. So the only way you can know about this story is on the top left. You can see the little arch, and there's a plaque in the middle of the arch. If you go there and read the little plaque, you can find out a little bit about what the story is about. It's actually such an interesting story that they made a short film about it, which has won multiple international awards. So it's really interesting, but you don't know when you're standing here. So working with the Spanish Armada Visitor Centre and also the local authority, we created an experience to bring this location to life. So what we had in the location was the bow and the monument of the bow of the ship. So how could we use that to bring the story of the Spanish Armada ships and Captain Francisco de Cuellar to life? So this is an example of how we did that. So you can see the weather in Ireland is pretty immersive in itself. Bit sunny there, not normally that sunny. So when you stand at the location and you hold up your phone, the Spanish Armada ship, the full-size ship, appears around you. And we've actually mapped, which you'll see now. So as you stand there, the slider doesn't exist anymore, but as you stand there, the ship appears around you in the location where the monument is there, and then Captain Francisco de Cuellar appears on the left-hand side and tells you all about the story. So this is a 3.5-minute experience, which tells you all about the story. We actually mapped...
Hola, amigo. My name is Captain Francisco de Cuellar of the Spanish Armada.
There he is.
I was one of the few survivors of the Spanish Armada ships that wrecked just a few hundred meters from here on the Estrella beach.
So you can see we mapped the
of
steps
today
in the ship with the steps in real life, so the user feels like they're walking up onto the bow of the ship. So it's a very unique experience that doesn't make sense anywhere else in the world. It's only when you're at this site and at this location, it's brought to life using spatial storytelling.
Great, so now we'll talk about a different example. So this is an example, coincidentally, also with a ship in Sydney, Australia. So when people walk along the promenade, they see this anchor, and once again, similar to the previous example, there's a small plaque that explains that there was a shipwreck there in 1899. However, what most people don't know is that there was a giant ship the size of the one in the photograph that appeared on that beach. So a lot of people walk by this anchor and think nothing of it. So what we have done is given that significance and actually recreated the scene based on the photograph that exists. So I'm going to play a video now that will show an example of this. Hopefully won't be too loud. So you meet the captain at the start, you hold up your phone to the anchor and he appears and starts to tell his story and he gives you some context.
The mighty Hereward Clipper
As the story goes on, he ends up walking around the location and showing you different parts. And something that makes this experience really special is that you've got to meet the characters, so you get to put some face to the names. You get to hear the story from his first-hand experience as if you're back in 1899. But then what's really special is that you actually get to see the scene come to life. So he walks over to the beach and looks down through his telescope to give you a glimpse of what he's seeing. So at this moment in time, the user doesn't know what they're going to see down on the beach. He looks through his telescope and you see the real image from 1899 of the Hereward shipwreck. So as he's looking through this, the user then has some context of, okay, when I look down on the beach, there's supposed to be a ship there. So then, to bring it to the next level, the captain actually walks down to the beach with you and brings you to the photographer on the day who took that photo. And then the photographer is chatting to you and gives you more context on what to do with the scene. So once you meet the photographer, he tells you to look around, and then lo and behold, you see the Hereward shipwreck appear on the beach. And the reason all this is possible is because of the technology we use in the background to have everything positioned exactly in the same place each time. So the user can actually walk back up to the promenade, so walk back up the steps and see the ship again in the exact same place. And we like to make a joke that this is one of our most immersive experiences, as the first time that our client used it, they walked down to the beach and ended up getting their shoes wet because the waves came in. So that's, some examples of the work we've done.
So I suppose in all of this, you can see these are all stories that only make sense in the space. So it's really about bringing a location to life with the content that makes sense in that space. One thing just to think about in terms of a technology perspective, you will have thought about these things before or may have heard of these terms. They're not exactly new or groundbreaking by any stretch, but it's how you think of them can make a real impact, right? So one thing that's really important is how you place and align the objects in the world, which you can use, and we're going to talk about different VPS systems now in a minute, but how you place that object. So the boat example that I talked you through, making sure that boat actually aligned with the monument rather than sitting off to the left-hand side. Also then the real-world interaction or perceived real-world interaction, so the sense that you have as a user that you can walk up the steps like you're walking up the steps on the ship increases the engagement considerably. Peripheral vision is a really important one. We'll give some examples of in a minute. And then sense of realism. So we don't want these things to be realistic. Obviously, that ship was not sitting up where the monument is. That we're not trying to make it realistic. But the sense of realism that you're actually walking up onto the bow of the ship is something that we strive for. So there's different ways to do that. And we focus on, if we can, I suppose the kind of mantra that we have internally is we don't want the end user to feel the technology at all or to even talk about the technology at the end. Our clients don't want that either. What they want is for people to engage in the story. So if a user has to place content manually themselves, or if they have to, if there's different technology issues where they have to scan things and it becomes more about the technology, they tend to focus on the technology after rather than the story. So what we are striving for is when you get to the location, hold up the device, the content places exactly as it should, and then you're in the story and you're focused on the content.
So to give an example of another experience that we worked on recently where the technology allowed people to have a seamless experience. In Dublin, we worked with an artist called Mazer, who's a well-known modern artist, and he created a 8-foot-long canvas with a surreal art, and he wanted to bring that to life using augmented reality. So initially, the idea was just to bring his canvas to life inside the gallery, which we did. So when users held up their phone to his art piece, all these different shapes came out into the room. However, we decided to go a step further and actually turn the art gallery into his art piece, creating it in this 3D format. So what's so great about this experience is because the alignment is so perfect on the building, people don't think about the technology or think about the placement, and they don't get distracted. They get fully absorbed into the experience. On the launch night, when we had over 500 people try it at once, a woman came up afterwards and said that she'd never felt so connected or engaged with art, and that when she actually saw his art piece inside later on, she felt more moved by an art piece than she ever had before, which was a great way to prove that, the AR experience really can allow people to connect better to the real world. So the perfect alignment essentially equals engaged minds. Then on the opposite side, when things aren't aligned and the technology isn't in place, the connection is completely lost. This is an example of a test AR experience that didn't go so well. We were trying to recreate an old building in place of the building that is there today. So you can see the building isn't properly placed, and then you can also see at a point in time there's a car that breaks the occlusion over on the left-hand side. So when the user is doing this experience, all of a sudden the realism is completely broke. So their presence is completely disrupted, the cognitive dissonance isn't there, the engagement is totally gone, and therefore they're no longer immersed. So it shows why the end user doesn't need to know what the technology is, but if the technology is not there, then it really negatively impacts their experience. Yeah.
And then with, again, context of that with the field of view, so what you often see, like everything we've just showed you, is what the camera sees in an AR experience. You often see things like this, and it looks really immersive from the video, but what's really happening is this. All that person has is that small little window into the virtual world that exists, right? So for the first bit there, for this guy, it makes sense because there's only a character for him to look at, which is not the most engaging experience. But then when he turns around, there's a full-size building which no longer exists. So what you can't really see on the right-hand side here is there's a massive building which used to exist in Dublin. All he can see is that one little window into that virtual world. So when you're building an experience, it's really important to think that that's all people can see. Now, when we've head-worn AR, it will be different, but all we have is this small little window into the virtual world. So making sure you're not doing things either side of the field of view. And if you do, you need to think about how the UI and possibly audio and other things can trigger users to look in different directions. So
now we're getting into the tools.
Yeah.
So what exactly is a no-code tool? And today we're talking about no-code tools in a wider sense. No-code tools meaning you don't have to code, but also that you need like something that are accessible. So the no-skill, low-skill tools, in other words, tools for dummies. All of these tools are also user-friendly, so they have to have a really intuitive interface, and a lot of them can be, drag and drop style tools, and also a lot of them have automated features, so generative AI, of course, and pre-built templates. So we're going to talk through now different tools that can be used to create AR experiences, and the ones that are accessible, user-friendly, and some that also have automation in them. So first of all, we're going to look at asset creation tools. So here's just a quick visual that shows from concept all the way to a 3D animated model. So these are the professional tools that people often use to create these, things like Photoshop, Maya, Substance Painter. All of these tools are costly and in both time and money. In order to use Maya, you have to spend like months learning to use it and have to spend years learning to be good at using it. They're also very expensive, so they're really not accessible. Blender is a tool that covers a lot of these areas. You can model, texture, and animate. However, even though it's a free tool, there still is quite a high barrier to entry because it's still quite a complex tool to use. Step in some of the easier, more accessible tools, things like Sketchfab and Mixamo. If any of you haven't heard of them, Sketchfab is like a stock asset library of 3D assets and animations, and Mixamo is a tool by Adobe where you can upload your model and add in, auto-rig your model and add in pre-made animations. And these are all great if you want to create, some stock assets essentially. However, step in 2023 in generative AI, and there's a whole load of new tools that we've all started using in the last 6 to 12 months and are rapidly increasing. So, for example, in the conceptual stage, a lot of people are using things like Midjourney and Blockade Labs, which we'll show some examples of. For modeling, using things like Common Sense machines, and for animations, things like Move AI. There's a whole list of AI tools that we could put up there. These are just a few examples to show some of the things that people use and that we have also used ourselves. So in terms of the conceptual art, I'm sure a lot of you are aware what Midjourney is. It's great for coming up with initial ideas, but also what you can do is you can actually bring these into the next stage to creating your 3D models. Blockade Labs is another great tool for creating 360 environments. In terms of how that applies to spatial storytelling, it can be great for like generating ideas. So imagine you visit a park and you want to wonder what that park would look like in the year 3000. You could help Blockade Labs to give you ideas of what buildings might look like or what the colors and textures could be. Also in the AR world, if you want to do a portal, you could actually use the 360 environment as your portal. Then looking at models and animation. These are two examples that I pulled from people on LinkedIn who were showing their workflows of how they used Midjourney to generate an image of a model, put it into Common Sense machines, that turns it into a 3D asset, and then put it into Mixamo to put a pre-made animation on it. So these are really great ways to have quick workflows, and they can be really great for prototyping and brainstorming ideas. We've been experimenting a lot with custom animation. So here's me at home using a tool called Wonder Dynamics, where simply with my phone, I set up my phone on a tripod, recorded myself, and the tool within like a very, very short amount of time, I can't remember, 30 minutes or so, turned that into a 3D animation with a lip sync. And this is not just a video, you actually get like the Blender file out in FBX, and you can go into Blender and further tweak and edit that. So you can then take that into like another program and build a whole flow of different animations.
So at this stage, you can create content because of all these great tools. Super easy to create content, but then what do you do with it and how can you put it into AR? So the tools that we all know very, very well, Unity and Unreal, have been the ones that most people are building experiences based on. There's obviously been an emergence of easier to use tools such as ZapAR, 8th Wall, Spark AR, Effect House, and a number of others. It is getting easier again. So Reality Composer is Apple's app, which you can quite easily build an AR experience if you have an up-to-date Apple device. Adobe Aero is another which you can quite easily with desktop and with a tablet device create an AR experience. And then we have our own, which we will be launching in about 4 weeks, called Stage Reality. So you can create your assets any way you want, but you can bring them into the world and launch them in an AR experience using Stage Reality. So to explain just how these fit into an AR creation pipeline, so what I'm assuming the bit before this pipeline is everything Adele has just spoken to you about. What is the asset creation pipeline? So once you understand how you're creating assets, it doesn't always have to come before, but running in tandem with this is you need to understand your location. So there's different tools to use to capture your location. One of them is Polycam, another is Scaniverse, another with Luma AI and NERFs and Gaussian splatting. There's a number of different ways you can now capture essentially a digital twin of your stage. The second then is how you connect those assets to the stage, and how whenever you lift up your phone, does the boat know to sit exactly where it needs to be, or the character know that they need to sit in that chair or on that park bench. So there's a number of tools which you can use there as well. Niantic Lightship, Immersive, Euphoria and ARway are some examples. Once you have that, you still need to compose the AR scene with audio and with assets and with characters. So the two no-code or easy-to-use versions being Stage Reality and Adobe Aero. And then once you create these, you still need to share it with the end user. So with Stage Reality, so we're from a company called Invisar, we have created Stage Reality. So when you build these experiences in Stage Reality, you can really easily publish them to the Invisar app. A bit like Adobe Aero, you can very easily publish them. So this is a bit of an insight into Stage Reality, which will launch in a couple of weeks. We believe it's the first no-code AR storytelling tool. So what we're trying to enable, be it filmmakers, creatives, historians, whoever wants to bring stories to life through AR. We've been contacted by, I can't remember how many people in the last couple of years saying, I want to do something like what you're doing, and then we explain how to do it, and then they realize they have to use Unity and use all these difficult to use tools. So this is a tool, super easy to use tool that anybody can build experiences themselves and simply publish in the Invisar app and share with their audience.
So now that we've talked about what spatial storytelling is, why it's important and how we do it and the different tools that can enable other people to, we'll kind of go back to why are we doing this? And it's because we really believe that spatial storytelling is the future of stories. Where we're at right now is the generative AI buzz. So there's a lot of people creating AR experiences just from one prompt. This is an example created by somebody that I found online who typed in a few easy prompts and all of a sudden an alien experience appeared. However, we're still a long way away from having next level experiences that truly immerse people, but we're really getting there. And to further on to that.
Yeah, well, just I suppose to give a bit of final context as we wrap up, this and this can seem a bit far-fetched, why people will want to create these experiences. Who are the world of people that want to create experiences? There are some people in their 20s, less people in their 30s, less in their 40s, and less in their 50s as the generations go on. Reality being, the Roblox generation today build worlds and interact with each other online through Roblox and through other tools. That will likely transition as AR becomes easier to use into the real world around us. So Stage Reality will play a part in that, Adobe Aero will play a part in that, but we expect the future of spatial storytelling to be really simple to use, to be drag and drop, so that it opens up not just for Unity and Unreal developers, but it opens up a world for anybody who wants to bring locations to life. So we're going to conclude there. If you want access to Stage Reality, that's a quick QR code where you can put in your details and we'll send it on to you. We also have a toolkit which has all the links that we share with you and some other additional links of more creator tools you can use. So if anybody would like any details on that, please scan the QR code and add your details in there and we will send it to you in the next couple of days. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much. The next generation of storytellers are going to have really cool tools, according to you. Are there any questions from the audience? Please raise your hand if you have any questions for Adele and Michael.
There we go.
So much cool stuff. What's the best tool that you found, an AI tool for creating meshes, like we've seen Midjourney for creating the textures, for creating the 2D side of things, but for creating 3D meshes, I've been struggling to find something.
Yeah, I mean, it's I'll be throw my 2 cents in.
Yeah.
It's probably the most underdeveloped bit, I would say, of generative AI at the minute. I think we're getting there with things like Common Sense Machine, but it's probably one of the most underdeveloped pieces. I'm not sure what your sense is.
Yeah, I agree. Out of all the different tools we've tried, I think Common Sense Machines is the one that's the most impressive because from a flat 2D image, it creates a mesh. Now, the meshes are like an absolute mess. They're not optimized at all, but it's a really, really impressive tool. There's a lot of other examples. I can send you some of the other ones that I've used that create, like when you type in a prompt, you could type in like a couch, a table, and a chair, and it'll create those assets for you, but they're very blocky and very basic. So definitely like the CSM, we included there because it's the most impressive so far. However, I will flag that like we've only used AI for 3D model prototypes before we've then kind of, delved into creating them further ourselves. So in terms of the animation tools, I believe we're actually at the point of being able to use AI animation tools in final production. But with the 3D, a lot of it is still for, just ideas and things like that. But like that, every week there's new tools out there that are getting cooler.
Yeah, I think the other thing is to think about what the asset is for. So if it's a hero character, which is the main piece of the scene, then you might want to do a bit more bespoke on it. But if it's a background object in a scene, if it's just a couch or a rug or something, it may be on Sketchfab. You may be able to buy it on TurboSquid or any of the 3D asset sites, or else, creating something that's, not super complex for a background object, you can use the tools for at the minute. But as Adele said, for them to be those hero assets, I think, you still need a bit of tweaking and a bit of customization for them at the minute. No problem.
No problem.
Another quick question. We still have time for another one.
All good, clear as
It
mud.
was a comprehensive presentation, I guess.
Well, thank you very
Okay.
much, Michael and Adele, for this
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Thank you.